guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today I want to have a little discussion about knives and value, and specifically about higher end and even custom knives. All right, and so this is something that I've thought a lot about myself. I've done a little bit of research into making knives, and I thought, if I had to design, what would I do about it? Would I try to make it myself? Would I try to get someone else to make? Like, how would I handle that situation? Especially if I had a really, really good idea, if I had a strong, engineering background, and I was going to design something that I thought could do a job better. Well, how would I handle that? And generally speaking, the way that we handle that in industries outside of the knife world is I take my idea, I go to a manufacturer, I get the idea manufactured, and then I sell them. And then if I'm able to, and if it's mildly successful, I may even shop around to other manufacturers to see if I can get that cost of production down as low as I possibly can while not sacrificing anything on quality. Okay, so when it comes to knives, we have this cult of personality around a number of different knife makers, which I think is fantastic. All right, I love Stang Blade Works, and I love this Boardwalk as not only a useful cutting tool, but as a collector's item. And as a piece that has a lot of my emotion invested in it, not just my money. Okay? Now, the question becomes, would I recommend, as a reviewer, am I going to tell my friends and neighbors and family members and coworkers that if they want a great fixed blade, they should look up Derek and get a Boardwalk from him? Probably not. Now, Derek, if you're watching this, I hope you're not mad at me. I love you, and there will be some people, and I love your work, and there will be some people for whom it makes a ton of sense to go with a what I would consider sort of a production custom. That is a custom piece that the maker does all the time and is able to kind of crank out in reasonable numbers. Okay, but for most people that are not knife enthusiasts, this is going to make a lot more sense, right? It's cheaper. There's a pretty robust warranty, so that if anything were to happen to it, you can, it's kind of Lion Steel's problem instead of your problem. If you lose it, you can just buy another one, and they're fairly affordable. I think these are like $140 in the US, which is, a fantastic price. Okay, if we move on from, useful fixed blades, actually, before I move away from custom fixed blades, I just have to bring in the Cohen's Craft Bushy here. This is one of my favorite knives in my collection. And again, if I was out in the woods with someone, if I was hunting with a friend and I pulled out this knife and cut something with it, and they're like, wow, I love that knife. That is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Where did you get it? I would tell them. And then if they said, should I get one? The answer is probably not. And in fact, most of my friends who know a little bit about my knife hobby won't even ask. They'll be like, I love that knife, but is there something that you know of that's on the market that can do a similar job without paying a custom knife fee? And that brings us to the problem of custom knives. One guy cutting out pieces of metal and grinding them and attaching scales and doing all of this makes about as little sense as it can possibly make if you want to deliver an effective cutting tool for the best price and the best quality, right? And that's because one guy working in a shop is incredibly inefficient, right? Cranking these out of a factory is so much faster and so much more repeatable and so much cheaper for the end user. So, and by the way, Morgan has done a number of collaborations. I think he's got a few with Kansept as well as a few with Bestech. And so he's, well aware of the manufacturing process and how that all goes. And I would say, and I know Morgan also has a job. And so that kind of brings me to what makes the most sense in terms of offering a product to the marketplace. And what makes the most sense, if you want a lot of people to buy your thing, whatever that thing happens to be, it's best to produce it in the highest quality you can for the lowest amount of money you can. And that means manufacturing it, and probably means manufacturing it overseas. All right. Now, there is, I believe, some value and some benefit and a great deal of joy and enthusiasm that comes from manufacturing your item in small quantities and using skilled craftsmen to do it. And so I love my Inkosi for that reason. All right. And in fact, the Boardwalk sort of falls into this category as well. Derek tends to make these in larger numbers than Morgan makes his various models. All right. But is there anything that this knife can do that this knife can't do? And the answer is really no. Okay. And this is a fraction, about a quarter of the price, maybe a little more than a quarter of the price, but not much. All right. And so when makers partner with manufacturers to produce stuff, the one that comes to mind, and actually I watched a video not that long ago about this from Edged Mindset, Carter, who I've watched for so many years. Carter, if you ever see this video, just got to say I love you. I've watched your channel so long, and we have such similar taste in knives that I really enjoy watching your content. Anyway, back to my own video. So for most people, it's not going to make sense to go to something like this, even though there are certain aspects in which this is better than this. All right, for the vast majority of people, this makes way, 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 way more sense. And in fact, for the vast majority of designers, doing this makes way more sense than this, or even doing this. All right, so this is Greg Freeman design built by Tuya Knives. And because of that, this costs a whole lot less than this, even though it's fairly similar in quality. And so, as I've thought about this, and I really have thought a lot about this, if I had a good idea for a knife design that I thought was something more than just the sum of its parts, and I will say, as a reviewer, there are certain features that I like, and the reason I've never designed a knife, never even given it much thought, I've drawn out some things that I thought might be cool, but I've never seriously pursued it because I've seen a whole bunch of knives, and all of my designs are just a conglomeration of things I like about other people's knives. Okay. I know this is a bit of an aside, but there are certain features that I've come to really appreciate over the years. And my knife design would just be like, okay, I like this kind of blade, so it has to have this kind of blade. I like this kind of pivot. I like this kind of lock. I like this kind of handle shape. I like this kind of texture. I like this kind of pocket clip that is done in this particular way. And so all I've done, all I have is a list of things that I like about the knives that I really enjoy. And that's all I would want to do. Well, I don't feel like that's offering a whole lot. And so I haven't really bothered. But if I had a great idea, what I would do is try to sell that idea or try to partner with an overseas maker like Bestech or Riot or We Knives. And so I've got another example. This actually isn't a great example because this, Chris Reeve has, it's not a design partnership. It's a design build type of situation. But here is the Jan Knives Chevron designed by Matthew Christensen, who I love, by the way. The We Knives Thug XL is one of the nicest designs that We has. And here's where I think this makes a lot of sense for us as enthusiasts. So now I can get something that's designed by Christensen Knife Works, built to an extremely high level of quality with the absolute best materials. Like this is MagnaCut and titanium and zirconium. Like it's all the stuff that you want. Okay. But if Matthew Christensen made this, I would pay thousands of dollars for it. And if Riot makes it, it's a few $100. All right. Now, by the way, I'm not for a moment complaining about popular knife makers and what they charge, because they're charging what totally makes sense. In fact, I've told the story before about Grimsmo knives where they had to keep raising the price just to bring down the demand. Okay. So I don't begrudge knife makers a dime, but I just don't think from a financial standpoint, from a fiscal standpoint, from a user standpoint, and in some ways even from a designer standpoint, custom knives make a lot of sense. The time that it takes for a maker to cut this out and do these grinds and cut this out, and it's just a huge waste of time when a machine could do it faster and more precise, and then put it together at a much cheaper price and deliver it in a way that's repeatable and enjoyable. And so, a good example of this is Brian Nadeau. He has tons and tons of great knives, and he's done great partnerships with Riyot, and I've had a bunch of those knives and loved every one of them, and I still love most of them. And so what he's doing, I think, just makes a ton of sense. Now, I know Brian still makes his own stuff, and that's great, and people have his knives and they thoroughly enjoy them. But to me, that would be insane, okay, to buy, something from Brian that's a custom for like, $2,000 Canadian or more, probably with the exchange right now, when I can have something built by Riyot that's very similar and which is going to perform exactly the same and feel almost exactly the same, but I can have it for a fraction of the cost. All right, so there you go, guys. That's my discussion of why custom knives make no sense. Of course, my dog's going to start barking and ruin the last bit of my video, but hopefully it's not too loud and obnoxious. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll talk to you soon.